Well, I'm going to start a new adventure. My name is Sally Spencer. I was born in Johannesburg in South Africa, and I grew up in the most beautiful country in the world called Zimbabwe. I come from an adopted home. Okay, my adopted parents were already in their late 40s, early 50s when they adopted me. I was 10 days old. I was born in Queen Elizabeth Maternity Home in Joburg. It's closed now. I went there when I was nursing in Witbank, and we had to go to Johannesburg for theory. And they took us on a tour of the Queen Elizabeth that was still open then. And that was the late 1970s. And I actually went to the part of the maternity ward where they would put the unmarried mothers, and then the babies that are up for adoption would go into this dark little room that had no windows. And it just had these little metal cots. They looked like doll cots that I used to have when I was a kid. And nobody else in the group knew, okay, about my story. And but that little room really affected me. And I didn't even know that I'd been adopted from the Queen Elizabeth. I never knew my whole story. I was never told my whole story. I knew I was adopted from a little girl, but I never knew my whole story. And also the ward where they would put the unmarried mothers, I think there were 6 beds, and it was isolated away from everybody else, okay? And it was so, you could feel the sadness and the hurt and the pain and everything. And I swore then to myself, I made myself a promise that I would find my mother, my birth mother, okay? Just not looking for a mother figure or anything else or any other family or any other nonsense that people come up with. Just so that she would know that I had survived and I had lived pretty well, okay? And to thank her for having that courage to give me up for adoption. I mean, it for me, okay, a mother that I am, I also had my first child out of wedlock, as we used to call it. And that was in the 1970s, 1975, okay? And here it was in Zimbabwe then, okay? I was ostracized. I mean, I was kicked out of, can you believe it, the YMCA, which is, Young Women's Christian Association. I was staying there and working, okay, going to work and stuff like that at a place where I was working. And they found out I was pregnant and they kicked me out. I mean, yippee for Young Women's Christian Association. Lovely stuff. Anyway, friends that I had that had boyfriends, the boyfriends wouldn't let them associate with me anymore. And one day I just flipped my lid and I said, seriously, you lot are shagging, okay? Do you think that your God doesn't see you doing it? Just because I'm pregnant, now I'm the wicked bee with an itch from the west, okay? I mean, come on. I was never ashamed of being pregnant and unmarried, okay? I never hid it. I didn't you know, for me, okay, it was done, and that was it. I never had anything to do with the father afterwards. It was a pretty sorry story, that lot. But anyway, so I knew what it was like to have a child out of wedlock and to have very little financial support, because I mean, the father of my son didn't even know he existed because I ran. He was 36 years old. He lived with his mum. She took all his wage, okay? He got weekly paid. He worked on a mine in Bandura, in one of the towns, mining towns in Zimbabwe. And I looked at this lot and I thought to myself, whoa, this is not where you are going to find sympathy or support or anything. She'll take your baby away from you. So I ran, and I never, ever told him. To this day, he still doesn't know. Okay. I mean, I don't even know if he's still alive. I've no idea. And so I know what it's like to have a child, and I couldn't imagine giving my baby up for adoption. I couldn't imagine it. I didn't have the courage to do that. I mean, I dragged him through life. Okay, he was with me, all right, if I suffered. I mean, I tried very hard to make sure that he didn't suffer. But of course, I mean, life is life, and kids suffer along with the parents. Okay, but I didn't have that courage to give him up. So I just wanted my birth mother to know that I was okay and that I'd had a pretty magical life. I mean, it wasn't the life that you see on TV with mum and dad, all muchi and running around, the kids, whatever, okay. I mean, my adopted mum and I, she didn't quite know what to do with me, because I was this emotional airhead child who had an opinion on everything, and I balked at, if you said to me, you can't do this, oh boy, I'd make sure that I did it. I mean, it didn't matter that I ended up in trouble, and I mean, it didn't matter. It was the fact that you said to me, you don't do that. If you'd said to me, listen, if you do this, blah, 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 this will happen, okay? And you reasoned with me, that was cool. But when you shoved me in a corner and gave me no option except to come out kicking and screaming and performing, okay, well, I was going to do that. Whether it was to my detriment or not didn't matter, but I was going to get out of that corner, okay? So she was never very sure what to do with me. She was from a different era, okay? So completely different. I mean, I always had food and clothing and a home and education, which I detested with a passion. Okay, I mean, I never understood what sitting in a classroom listening to some boring old fart pumping out stuff that I had no idea where it was ever going to do for me in life. So, but I managed to get through. I managed, and I got through. It wasn't what my mum wanted me to be, okay? I mean, she then, after they'd adopted me a year and about a year and 6 months later, they adopted another little girl, okay? And that was my sister. And she was highly intelligent and so, oh my, oh me, okay? And then here came this bulldozer, all right, that challenged everything that stood in front of her, okay, didn't accept anything. And my mum, I don't know, she had a hard life by the time she met my dad, okay? And then my dad's family rejected her, and it wasn't that cool, and she wasn't Lani enough for his family, okay, who were British immigrants to South Africa, because they were still living in South Africa then. And my mum came from Dutch family from Holland, and her dad was an advocate here in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, okay, sort of George, Knysna, all those places. And during when World War II broke out, okay, he refused to go to the army, and they tarred and feathered him, and it affected my mother. Was only young then, okay, but it affected her. She never ever forgot it. And then her mum disappeared off into the night. She was the mother of 6 kids, and she had been the governess to my maternal grandfather, who had 6 kids from his first wife, and she died, and then he married the governess, who then had 6 more children. So they were pretty prolific. But apparently she disappeared off into the night with some guy. Okay, and I got a story from my brother that, well, he's not my brother, he's my mother's actual blood child, okay? But I called him my brother because I was brought up with him as my brother. So, okay, cool, he's my brother, okay? And he told me a story. He said, oh, Granny, she jumped into an ox wagon with a little suitcase tied with string and buggered off into the night. I mean, I really laughed. But then I did a search one day on the archives, the South African Archives site, and I actually found her and this man. I think they married. I can't remember right now about that, okay? But she was alive until 1972, okay? And we used to go through the town that she lived in every 3 months, and my mother never said a word. I don't know if she ever visited her, okay, or she ever knew that she was alive, but it was a really strange situation. Mind you, there was nothing normal about my life. So my mum was if you stood her next to these TV mums, you'd say she was cold, okay? But you know what? She was my mum, and that was enough for me. I mean, yeah, there was a difference between me and my sister, and it was always, oh, why can't you be as intelligent as your sister? Okay? And I used to think, oh, please, seriously, one intelligent person in the family is enough. Don't need to be me, okay? I'm quite happy bushwhacking and everything, because I grew up in Zimbabwe on a cattle ranch, so in the bush, and I mean bush, okay? There wasn't a neighbor within, I think it was about 10 miles. And that was through bush, little tiny roads, okay, and then you had to cross a river on a locally built causeway. I mean, it weren't fun. So, and there weren't neighbors nearby with kids anyway. The nearest neighbor, who was about 10 miles away, they were an elderly couple, okay? And then the nearest neighbors with kids was a good 20 miles away. So visiting neighbors and things like that didn't really happen. Okay. But anyway, I mean, it didn't bug us because you just got on with life. The workers that were on the ranch, they had kids and we all grew up together. Okay. I mean, playing in the yard, going for bike rides, whatever it was. Okay. Okay, there were no other kids nearby. So what? There was a whole classroom there where we were, okay, of different colors, different beliefs, different customs. So, I mean, no, but I never, excuse me, allergies. I never grew up feeling that I had missed out on anything, okay? Anyway, I think that's enough for my first chat on this. I know it wandered off everywhere, but those are the best kind of stories. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this. There'll be a follow-up pretty soon. So wherever you are, may your gods go with you. And please, let's learn to love each other again and treat each other with some respect and decency and dignity. Okay. Ciao, ciao. See you again.